Hey, everybody, it's Thursday night. That means it's time for the Haven Comics Shop Talk. That means we are going to be talking comics. We're going to be talking art. We're going to be talking the industry of comics. I'm sure we'll probably talk about a few other things too because it's me, it's Alan. Food is going to come up at some point, and Disney probably will too because that's just how we roll. So stick around, hit the like button if you haven't done that already. Make us happy. I hope you hit that button because I can't tell yet. So we're just going to pretend, and I'm going to be happy anyway. Speaking of people that are happy and who are never upset, never bored, never angry, what's happening there, Alan?
It is funny that you introduced me that way because I am absolutely ecstatic tonight. I have life changing, amazing news that I know people are just dying to find out about.
Well, now I'm dying to know.
It's real simple. My new contacts came in today. I'm no longer wearing my glasses. Life changing, earth shattering. It's a great feeling.
We have the technology. Who knew?
I know. I ran out of contacts a month ago, and I've been walking looking through smudged lenses ever since.
All right, well, let's see who we got in the chat so far. It looks like Tots is back in his usual place as the first person to jump in. Indeed. Tots, welcome, sir. Mike Wesolowski in the house, and he made it early enough for the countdown. Man, we're always happy to see you, Mike. Great to have you on. Nick, you know we're not going to say that, but we're happy you're here.
We
Stick
only
around.
say
It's
it if
going to
we're
be
super
fun.
duper.
That's right, super duper. That's right. Bill Fisher,
What
how you
up,
doing, sir?
Bill?
Look at that. We got Bill in the house already. That's exciting. Well, guys, I want to take a second and say we have an awesome guest tonight. I'm really excited to be bringing our guest on. She has been doing comics for a long time, and she has worked on some of the coolest stuff with some of the coolest people. And they in turn say, "Wow, we do stuff with her, and that's awesome." So I want to just go ahead, skip all the stuff we normally do, all the BS, and introduce her. This is the one and the only Miss Barb Kaalberg. How are you, Barb?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Glad to be on. Hello, everybody.
Well, we are really, really glad to have you on here. Um, for anybody who doesn't know, you are a comic book artist, um, and you do an awful lot of inking,
Yep.
primarily, I would say. Is that accurate?
I have been an inker for over 30 years, started in 1989. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've also branched out to coloring and writing.
The writing bit is what we're going to want to get to here soon because that's exciting. You're doing some really cool stuff with Silverline. Uh,
Hi, Mike.
First up with the hey, how are you? Yep, indeed. Happy Alan is the world upside down. I don't think it matters which direction you put in context. He's always going to be looking the right way, right?
No, I mean, I'm always going to look for the positive. I mean, one of the biggest positives that I found this week is the one chip challenge is over with, and I don't have to worry about it for another year.
Everybody's going to ask about this, so why don't you go ahead and get that over with? Telling people, Barb, we did something really stupid this past weekend, which we're known to do. We did this Packy one chip challenge, which is a nuclear hot chip. In this case, this year it turns your mouth blue on top of everything. We had 7 guys ended up doing it. Is that how many we had, Alan?
Oh no, we ended up probably 8, maybe even 9, because we actually it started.
We had
off
a couple of walk-ins, right?
Yeah, we actually had 3 people walk up. Wait a minute.
He's trying to count, so he could be here all day.
Oh wow, okay, that was quick. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know where I cut out at, but we did have this lady come walking up. I say she's probably in her 20s, rough guess. And Jeremy had made the announcement that we had extra chips if anybody wanted to try one. Well, naturally, when we said that, it was like the Red Sea parted. People were getting as far away from us as they possibly could because nobody wanted to have anything to do with the chip. Well,
I
this
wouldn't.
girl says,
No, I
I'll
wouldn't
try.
either.
And we're just kind of like, do you know what it is? Are you sure? And, we're trying to explain it to her and everything. And I felt so sorry. I mean, this girl, she ate the chip and everything. I will give her all the credit where credit is due. She lasted longer than I did. I think she probably lasted about 5 minutes, and she was having to get something to drink. But I felt so sorry for this girl. She had tears just a streaming because, I mean, it makes your eyes water. But let me tell you what, she stepped in there when nobody else would. And I mean, I was so impressed, but I felt so sorry for her.
Well, the cool thing about this idiocy that we did was we built on this from what we did this last year, uh, and this year we raised over $2,000 for Angel Tree.
Ooh, cool.
And we also did a food drive for Manna House, a local food bank, and we brought in a pretty respectable donation for Manna House too. So, to all the people who were complete idiots and put that nuclear hot thing in your mouth and chewed it up and swallowed it, awesome work, because that's going to help make Christmas for a lot of people. That's going to keep a lot of people fed. So really appreciate you guys doing all that stuff, Alan. But how bad was it for you later that night? That's what everybody's wanting to know in the chat.
Let's just say I lost the battle and the war. We'll leave it at that. So we have a private chat going. Some of us, the guys that were actually doing it, and I believe at one point Tots was even texting at about 15 till 4 that morning. So yeah, it was bad for everybody all night long.
If anything could impact Tots, then it was pretty bad, because that man has a stomach and a digestive tract made out of like some kind of industrial steel.
Well, I did my usual. I never claimed that I was going to make it the hour that this challenge is.
You just jumped straight from eating the chip into the Baskin Robbins food truck, didn't you?
Actually, I had already. I was actually accused of doping by someone because I sent my daughter to the Baskin Robbins truck, and I was eating ice cream beforehand, and I was accused of doping. That's fine. I'll take it. I don't care. But I think I went probably about 3 minutes. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? We've got these people's money. I did what I said I was going to do. I ate the chip. I'm a grown man. I've got nothing to prove. Give me my ice cream. And I started eating my ice cream. And now here's the sad thing about it. The ice cream only helps so much. And it only helps the portion of your mouth that it's actually touching. So I literally have ice cream in my mouth, but the sides of my tongue and my cheeks down into here feel like they're on fire.
You gotta let it melt and swish it around.
Well, at one point, I was literally just standing there with a mouthful of ice cream. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was not swallowing the ice cream. I just had it in my mouth. This year was definitely hotter than last year's. And I did proclaim that next year will be my retirement. It'll be my victory lap, because I'm not doing this crap after I turn 50. It's just not happening. I will help support. I will buy the chips. I will cheer people on from then on out.
You guys are still babies.
Well, thank you.
You can't be older than him.
I'm 63.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You don't look it.
I figured you must have got into comics when you were 12.
No, I was a late bloomer. I didn't get in until I was 29.
Oh my goodness! Well, good on you.
Keeps you young.
You look younger and healthier than me, so congratulations. I would not have thought that at all. Wow, good for you. That's awesome. Speaking of starting into comics, I guess there's no better place to start than the beginning. So, what, if we were to ask, would be your
I was not expecting that.
How did you get into this business? What made you go, at the age of 29, what made you go, you know what, comics?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was so incredibly bored to tears that I could hardly stand it. And I read all the time. I walked into Walden bookstores. Remember Walden's?
Oh, man, I used to love Walden's.
Yep. and I picked up this graphic novel called ElfQuest, and I was gone. Absolutely gone. Now, that's not to say that I didn't read comics before. I read them when I was a teenager. I actually worked in a Rexall drugstore, and one of my
Remember those too?
duties was to go to the spinner rack and pull off all of the unsold comic books, rip the covers off, because they sent the covers back to the distributor for so many credits. And then I was supposed to throw the body of the comics away, which I did right into my car trunk. And I would take
You
them home.
disposed of them.
I disposed of them. And I was really, really hooked on Travis Morgan, the warlord from DC.
Oh, heck yes.
I mean, I was a 14-year-old girl, and this guy was
He's
running
got
around
a book
with a
coming
skull.
up. It's the weirdest team book ever, but he has a book coming up.
This guy's running around naked with a skull cod piece. I mean, what was a teenager girl to do,
Especially with Mike Grell on art, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was totally into comics when I was a teenager, but then got out of them for a while. And then as a bored stay-at-home mom, I totally got into ElfQuest, and I got into the whole fandom experience and started going to conventions and stuff. And I was a painter, and I would paint scenes from the book, the ElfQuest books, and I would give them away because it's copyright. I couldn't sell them. And I would give them away to friends. And one of my friends gave one of my paintings to the Peonies, and they hired me to do a 3-foot by 3-foot backdrop for their convention booth.
How awesome is that?
Yeah. And so during the course of doing this painting, I'm thinking, this is my toe is in the door, not my foot, but a toe, maybe a little toe. And I could take my ink brushes or my paint brushes and start to ink comic books. So I practiced for a year, just doing all kinds of different inking exercises. Then I went out to San Diego Comic-Con in 1988 or 87. And with everything and the kitchen sink in my portfolio, which is exactly the wrong thing to do, and just got absolutely shredded in my critiques, which rightfully so. But I sat in on some seminars.
Now, who were you getting critiques from?
Well, different editors. I was just going around and showing my work. And I mean, I had everything, including, the stuff I'd done in high school in there, which is not what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But I listened, I took it with a grain of salt. It wasn't personal. I went to seminars by Dick Giordano and took notes like I was in high school or college. And came back home, and I practiced for another year. And like 6 months of that, I was just making lines. I was doing cross-hatching. I was making straight lines. I was making circles, just page after page to try to get my control. And I had my control down so good that you would think I was using a ruler, but it was all brush. And then I went back in 88 and showed my stuff to the guys at Eternity and got hired. And this is a whole nother thing, is that they hired me to do gray washes on Tiger X. They said, "Do you know how to do gray washes?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." I lied through my teeth. I didn't even know what gray what's a gray wash. I had no idea. You fake it till you make it.
And
so
at that time, you couldn't go Google it.
No. I came home and went straight to the library, almost straight from the plane. But I did it. And they hired me then to start inking for Adventure Comics. This is all under one umbrella. Malibu, Adventure Comics, and Eternity Comics were all under the same umbrella. So they hired me at Adventure Comics to do Planet of the Apes, which I think I did 11 issues of Planet of the Apes. And during the course of inking that, I never missed a deadline, so they were very impressed. And then I was brought on to the Ultraverse then after that. And everything just went wild after that. Once I hit the Ultraverse for Malibu, the world just opened up. And I was getting work right and left. And I spent a good share of the 90s working for DC and some of it for Marvel and everybody else under the sun, including Warp Graphics.
So Malibu, Eternity, all these, they had some limited success, in my definition of it anyway. They had some success with the comics they were putting out. They had a solid track record. You knew they were going to put out a good product, all these things. And then they hit the Ultraverse. And they came out with their own interconnected superhero world. And it was absolutely stellar. It was stunning. They had great writers. They had great artists. They had a phenomenal coloring process that was kind of groundbreaking. How did that come about? Do you know, or were you privy to any of that in the formulation of that universe and how that got launched?
I was not, although I've talked to Dave Olbrook and Chris Ulm and the others, Tom Mason. They had a very, very aggressive business model. They had billboards plastered all over the place, not only in LA, but they had them in New York too, right across from the DC building. They had billboards on buses. They had TV commercials.
You don't see that for comics anymore.
No,
and you didn't see it before that either, really.
No, and it really launched them. And they, even with all of that, it would have gone nowhere if the product wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't so interested at the beginning with, is this going to make me a fortune? But at the beginning, it was, is this going to cover the bills? See, Marvel and DC, they look at the books and say, how many units can we sell? And Malibu looked at it as, can we sell enough units to make a profit? They didn't care how much of a profit, but just the profit. And they had the advantage of tapping into some incredible talent.
Oh, they surely did.
I was fortunate.
Phenomenal people. That Malibu was my introduction to a lot of different artists. Terry Dodson on Mantra, Derek Robertson, Kyle Hotz.
Yep.
Who else?
Jeff Johnson, whom I was.
Absolutely. He's been phenomenal. We've had him on the show before. And we talked a lot about the stuff he did at CrossGen. But yeah, no, fantastic artist. So many great artists. Stephen Butler doing some stuff there on Prototype and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stories were also good too. It's like they were firing on all cylinders.
They had Norm Brayfogle writing.
He was doing Prime. Yeah,
Prime,
of course.
And Steve Siegel. Oh gosh, I can't remember who all was. I know I worked on Nightman, Solution. I did every issue of Solitaire. I did some Mantra.
That was great.
Yeah, I loved it. And Jeff has been so good to me. He's done some work for me on my book now, and it's so good to work with him again.
I absolutely believe that. He's a great guy. So speaking of, you've worked with all kinds of talent on the penciling side of things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones that everybody who's in the comics world knows who this guy is, but outside of it, nobody does. It's, from what I can tell, is Rick Hoberg.
Yeah.
That dude's amazing. He's phenomenal. He doesn't get the credit he deserves, I think.
No, he also did a pinup for me for my current book, which is for sale, by the way, on the Kickstarter.
Yes, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you got into inking and stuff. I would like to go back to that because inking is such an interesting skill set. And you started out of the gate using brushes. And that just boggles my mind. Because for me, a brush is this unwieldy thing that changes depending on how much pressure you put on it, which is exactly the reason you like it, I would guess. But I'm like, I couldn't draw a straight line with the same depth and thickness to it if I wanted to. So when people use brushes for inking, it just blows my mind. And you started with that. You didn't graduate to that.
No, I started with that, and I had, I worked over Ethan Van Sciver when he first broke into comics, DC. Mm-hmm. He did Impulse, and I inked him then, and his stuff looks like pen work, and I was using a brush, and it still looked like pen work. It looked like the image style pen work, and that's how much control I had. I don't have quite that much anymore, but my control was absolute. It was incredible. I could make it look whatever you wanted to. I actually did a She-Hulk for Marvel once, and the editor said, "Can you give her Byrne hair?" After,
as in John Byrne, yeah.
As in John Byrne, I said, "Yeah, sure. I could. I could imitate anything I wanted to. I would go with the style of the book. My philosophy was that my job wasn't to overshadow the pencils. My job was to enhance the pencils so that you could tell who the penciler was, and I was just enhancing it, plumping them up a bit. It wasn't going to be, oh yeah, that's definitely Barbara Kaalberg. No, it was that was Derek Robertson, or that was Rags Morales, or
God, I love Rags Morales' work.
Now, at the time, was using brushes like common, or did very few people use brushes to ink comics, or how was?
It was about 50-50 at the time. So I knew several inkers that were using brush, and just as many of them were using the crow quill.
Now, was that out of personal preference, or was it something that just kind of helped with the art itself?
I think a lot of it had to do with personal preference. A lot of the brush work began to go away with the image style, but I could still imitate it with a brush. So it was personal preference a lot of time, and a lot of time it was personal preference on the part of the editor as well as the artists. So they would ask for a specific style, and that's what you would give them. But I was very good at imitating.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that they would ask you for a particular style on the inking side. I can see where they might do that for a penciler. And I know Stephen Butler, for example, often gets asked, hey, can you draw me a John Romita Spider-Man, or can you draw me a Ditko Spider-Man, or can you draw me a Kirby Reed Richards? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever you want. But so it's a surprise to me a little bit to hear that they would also do that on the inking side of things. I would have never expected that.
Yeah, sometimes they didn't. I mean, not often, because more or less they hired the penciler for a specific style, and they trusted the inker not to screw it up too much. So they were hiring inker for either one of two reasons: one, to make the penciler look better without losing his style, or two, to fix a terrible penciler. That's the two main reasons why you're hired as an inker, to either enhance or to fix.
Now,
but never to drown out the penciler,
Now, when you say a terrible penciler, would that be? And I don't want to name names or anything.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah,
that's not what I'm asking. Would that be somebody that's only, say, kind of doing half the work, or they're not turning in like a full page or something, like you're really and truly having to add to it, or were they just not good?
Yes.
Great answer. Okay. Great answer.
I've had a bit of everything. I've had some that are very sketchy. Basically, they're just
breakdowns or something, and then they walked away.
Yeah, or some of them are doing the figures and just kind of lightly sketching an impression of the background, and it was up to me to finish the background. And then there's been other pencilers was like, I don't think the human head is supposed to turn that way, or that's a hand, or this perspective is all off. And I actually ran into that problem one time with Carmine Infantino. I was inking one of his books, and I was in tears because there was a single panel that the perspective was right. But see, he had a specific style that he just went for it. He just eyed it, and it looked right, but it wasn't right. But it was mind-boggling. So I called my mentor at the time, John Nyberg, who had worked over him quite a bit, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. He goes, don't even try to fix him. Just ink what's there. I'm like, okay. And that's what I did.
I'm going to tell you something that you just mentioned, Carmine Infantino. That's the second time I've heard his name mentioned this week. And last week, I had a bizarre dream that I was in London riding around one of those double-decker red buses it was just me, Carmine Infantino, who I've never met or anything. I have no idea why, and Andy Price, comic book artist on My Little Pony.
Oh my God.
We're all sitting on top of this double-decker bus talking comics riding through London. Weirdest dream ever. And then twice this week, people have brought up Carmine Infantino in conversation. So there's clearly something going on that I need to go dig into some Carmine Infantino books. I got to figure out why this is going on, because something's happening. The universe is telling me something.
If you think that's a weird dream, you don't want to know what I dream about.
I already knew that, Alan.
Mine are incredibly detailed. Like I'll walk into a Victorian house and I will dream every little tchotchke on every little shelf. It's very vivid.
And do you remember them afterwards?
Oh yeah.
See, that's cool, because a lot of people, I tend to remember my dreams as well, but a lot of people, they wake up and they're like, yeah, I dreamed something. I remember it was cool, or I remember it was weird, but that's it. They don't remember.
That's where I get a lot of my literary ideas, is from my dreams.
Well, that makes complete sense to me, because your brain is working on that stuff in the background, and you're saying, hey, here's something. Here's a connection I hadn't thought of before, but it's here now.
So who were some of your favorite artists to work with when you were inking for them?
Craig Rousseau was a lot of fun.
I can see that.
I spent 2.5 years on Impulse, and 2 of those years was with William Messner Loebs as the writer. Craig Rousseau was the penciler, and I was the inker. And he was just fun. His stuff was just plain old fun. And then they brought in a new team. We wrapped up our run on it, and they brought in a new team, but the inker got behind. And so they brought me back for another 6 months, 6-issue run with Ethan Van Sciver. So I ended up actually spending 2.5 years on Impulse. I liked working. Oh, I love Mel Ruby. Mel is so fun to ink. Rick Hoberg, I've worked with him. Rags Morales was a lot of fun.
Now, what makes an artist a fun one to work over? Is it just that you connect with the way that they put lines on the page?
Yeah,
it's just see the same picture they're trying to see. What makes that fun versus one that's just laborious?
It's not too much work.
So they don't just leave black X's everywhere saying, "Hey,
fill this in with black." That's fine by me. I just outline them, and my husband filled them in.
My wife would never trust me to do something like that.
He was a great assistant. He would fill in all my blacks, and then he would erase the pages. Now, remember, this is back in the old days when I was working on originals, not the blue lines like we do now. And he would erase the pages, and then he would go back and sometimes put in some more blacks if he had grayed them out too bad when erasing. So yeah, he cleans them up on the computer if the pages I get are dirty. And a good example of that is one of the lines that we're doing with Silverline is that we're taking old 90s black and whites and we're coloring them and reissuing them. Well, a lot of these are scanned in right from the original books. Yep. You just take the books apart and scan them in. Well, if you look at the scans, they're very dirty. They've got some bits of little black spots all over the place, and they have to all be cleaned up, which is an incredibly laborious job. Nobody has the time for it, so I offered my husband. Oh, Dick can do it. We're retired now. He doesn't have anything to do, right? So so now he has an official production assistant title with Silver.
How awesome is that?
Now, do you prefer? God, this is going to sound so bad the way I'm going to word it. I just cannot think of any other way to word it. Sorry if I offend anyone. Do you prefer the older methods of inking and drawing comics, or do you like the more modern digital way of doing things? Which one is your personal preference?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I left for a little bit, and then when I came back, everybody was doing it by sending the art through digitally through email or Dropbox or whatever, and then you would download it. I would download it on my end and pull it up in like GIMP or Photoshop and turn the lines blue and then print them out on a Brother Pro printer on an 11 by 17 500-pound Strathmore, and then ink the blue lines. And when I first started doing that, I absolutely hated it because I didn't like the blue lines. They were so light, and I was always squinting at them. And I said, well, I prefer it the other way, where I get the original pencils and we erase them, and then it's nice and clean. But then it occurred to me that when I did it that way, I got to keep 100% of the pages after I was finished, which never happened when the old way, all the pages would go back to the publisher, and the penciler would get 2/3 of the pages, the original pages, and the inker would get 1/3 of the pages. But this way I got to keep them all. So I really got to liking it. And then digital inking really started becoming big. And I was like, oh, I will never do digital.
So how much digital do you do now?
All of it. And there's a reason for that. I am a true artist. I shall never do anything but a real art. That lasted until I hit about 60, and I started getting the very slightest tremble in my hands. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll look into this. I've got 2 iPads sitting around here with me right now. And I found that if you just tweak the smoothing control a little bit, I've probably extended my career another couple of decades, because it takes care of that. I have just the very slightest little tremble. You can't hardly see it. You can't see it, I'm sure, but I can tell when I physically ink.
If you're doing a fine work like inking a fine line, I can see where that would be really problematic.
Yeah. Well, so the smoothing control on an iPad works fantastic. And I said, well, as long as I'm going to go digital, I'm 60 years old. If I'm ever going to break out of inking and do something, I'm 63.
Right?
I'm 63.
Hey,
that's what I was saying earlier.
I picked something up for you, Tots.
This was 3 years ago when I turned 60. I said, if I'm ever going to do anything more and push the envelope, I better get off my ass and do it now. So I taught myself digital coloring on top of it, and it is a blast. I am having a time of my life, and then I took up writing too. So I'm not only inking, but I'm coloring and writing now in my dotage.
Well, so I've got a heck of a way to go into retirement, is to expand what you do.
Yeah, I actually retired from my mogul job when I turned 60. Yeah.
So I've got one more question about your personal preference, and then whatever y'all want to talk about, I'm like fine with. And it doesn't matter if it's, any comic book company comes to you today and says, for the rest of your career, you can only draw this character, ink this character. Who would it be? Who is the one character that you will never get tired of drawing or inking?
My own.
Okay.
Divinity.
Gotcha. And
we're going to talk about that here in a second.
That is the one for the Kickstarter, correct?
Yes. Do you find it faster and to ink and color digitally? Yes, I do. Because when I inked physically, I was a perfectionist. I hated whiteout. So I'd inked a little bit slower so I could plot my lines and make sure everything was down the way it should be. I very rarely ever had to use whiteout on my pages. I'm extremely anal inker. My lines are very crisp, very clean. Another thing was that in all the years, I've been doing this for 30 years, I've never missed a deadline. Ever.
So you didn't work at Image, I guess.
Yes, I actually did.
In the early days, those guys never met a deadline. They were like, I see it. It's up there. I'm not going to meet it.
Yeah, I'm never going to say I was the best inker out there, but I was a workhorse, a good inker, and I never missed a deadline, which meant that I was employable. And during the 90s, I did a minimum of 2 issues a month. I could do 2 pages a day. That's the old-fashioned brush way. So I was doing 2 issues a month plus covers, trading cards, and other stuff to come along. So I was very, very busy girl. But those were long days. Those are 12 to 16-hour days. And I did it 7 days a week. So at the end of the decade, I was burnt. I was burnt out.
So with the digital age, how many do y'all normally do, say, in a month now? Or how many could you do in a month now?
Well, I'm retired now, so I work on my own book, and I can kind of make my own pace. But I'm working on 3 books all the time. I'm working on my own. I'm working on Cat and Mouse, and I'm coloring Sirens. So I'm working on 3 books at any one time, and it depends on when I get the stuff in. I can turn it around pretty fast. What apps do I use? Procreate. Yes, that is exactly what I use. I was an old dog trying to learn a new trick when I turned 60. I'd never done anything digital. Photoshop looked like something from outer space. I couldn't figure it out. To save my life, I needed something that was like Photoshop for dummies, something that you could teach a 5-year-old, because that was about my speed. And
you're preaching to me right now, because Photoshop scares me to death.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. I tried GIMP, couldn't figure it out. What is an alpha channel? I don't know.
I love GIMP.
And I use
different
GIMP.
kind of GIMP there, Alan.
I use GIMP to switch my pencils to blue lines, and I scan them back in and clean it up. But once you put out the initial outlay for an iPad, which is like $1,200 for an iPad Pro, that's your biggest outlay. The actual Procreate app is like $10, one-time shot. That's it.
Of course, you don't have to buy all that ink anymore either that way, right?
That's true. That's true.
You don't have to re-ink a pen or any of that stuff.
Yeah, and two taps and you erase it. What your mistakes are. So I can go much faster because I can go oops and then just erase it and just keep going. So
that has always puzzled me, and I understand from a conceptual perspective, I guess, that when you're inking things, thicker lines or lines with more depth or more weight indicate something maybe closer or bigger, and or finer lines go the other way.
Weight. You want to have a thicker line on the bottom side of, say, an arm than the top side, because it indicates roundness and gravity.
See, that's the stuff that just blows my mind. I would never have thought of that. I would think the arm is this close, therefore all aspects of it are going to be the same heavy weight, right? But that's fascinating.
Yeah, distance, heavier lines close up, finer lines farther back.
But how do you decide where that line is in the depth of a thing? How do you decide the thickness of this versus this versus this? Is it just because you see it and you feel it?
Yeah.
That drives me nuts because I don't see it. So I would never be able to do it.
The stuff that's closer to you is going to have a heavier line than the stuff that falls back from you. And the stuff that's underneath, or the light source, the light source is another thing. So if the light source is coming from here, the line weights are going to be very light over here and darker over here because you're in shadow. It's just a lot of different things that you got to keep in mind when you're inking. And something that's impossible to explain is that when I'm inking, I also feel the textures. I know that doesn't make any sense, but so if I'm going to be doing rocks, I will switch to a crow quill, because crow quill's got that rough, gritty texture to
kind
it.
Of scratchy kind of a look.
Yes, and that's what I want. I don't want the smoothness of a brush. Now that I'm inking digitally, there are different brushes that you can get. I use a smooth inking brush and a stylus pen, and it gives you that thick to thin that you can use with a brush, but there's also other different, there's a stylus. There's other different brushes that you can use, and one of my favorites is actually a Kirby Crackle brush.
They make a brush for the Kirby Crackle. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
You just scribble with your stylus and all these little blobs all over the place. It's a hell of a lot of fun. And,
I don't know if I want to tell Stephen Butler about that or not, because he draws Kirby Crackle like all the time. he loves to draw a character like Silver Surfer just so he can load up the background with half destroyed planets and Kirby Crackle.
He's also doing stuff for Silverline.
Isn't he great?
Yes.
He's a hoot. I love that dude.
What kind of methods do you use to quicken final work? Repeat a tough feature over and over till it comes naturally? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, but you mean?
I guess he's trying to ask how do you get into a rhythm where it's faster? You just do it until it's second nature.
Yeah.
Or something.
Well, like I said, going back to when I first got into it, I spent 6 months just making lines. So it became an extension of myself just to make different lines, you know.
That's a lot of discipline just to do that for 6 months.
Yeah, every day. Just make lines until you have perfect control of your instrument. To make things faster, there's an old saying, do you want it fast and good or slow?
What is it? Better, cheaper, faster? You can only have two.
Yeah. So I would prefer to slow it down a little bit and stay up a couple of extra hours than to make it fast.
Okay, so
that's what makes it a good product, though. Oh, well, that's actually an interesting question.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Have you ever gone back and redone an old work to see if you could do it better?
Or just to try to do it a different way. If you're like, I kind of wish I had done it this way versus that way.
No, but you know what? I bet I've got a couple of pieces that I have been thinking of doing that. If you want fast bad, you get it bad fast. That's right.
That's pretty good, Tots.
So I am going to post the link to the Kickstarter campaign.
Okay.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, yes. Tell us about Divinity. Give us the origin story there, and then let's talk about how folks can find your work and buy it.
All right. So
this is a live Kickstarter right now, guys.
This is. It just happened to fall at the same time you asked me to come on your show, which was divine.
I like their choice of words.
Yes. So several years ago, Roland Mann used to be one of my editors at Malibu. And Dean Zachary used to be one of my pencilers at Malibu. Are we seeing a theme here? Approached me and wanted to restart Cat and Mouse, which was a very popular series way back when.
Way back when.
Mm-hmm. So we did it. We started it and we kickstarted it, and it was very successful. And we kind of put our heads together and said, you know what? We should really start Silverline up again. So, Roland had done Silverline a couple of other times. And the company failed because he was trying to do too much by himself. He says, I'll do this, but I cannot do this by myself again. It's just too much. He said, Barb, is there anything else that you can bring to the company? And I says, well, I've just spent the last 20 years when I'm not doing comics, I've been a corporate accountant. And he says, well, you're our CFO. So
congratulations.
Yes.
It's a boy.
Yeah.
Really?
So we started Silverline, and originally it was a bunch of old disenfranchised Malibu artists that wanted to put out their own books because we weren't getting hired with DC and Marvel anymore.
Wait, so that right there chaps me so bad.
So we just said, you know what, screw it, we'll just do our own books. And so we now have I don't know, 15, 20 books now that we're doing. We're doing so many books that we can't do one Kickstarter even every month to cover all the books. So the current Kickstarter is actually 5 books. You don't have to buy all 5 books. You can buy just one book if you want to, but we have to offer 5 books at a time because we're getting closer and closer to doing distribution into retail. But right now we're still on the Kickstarter trail.
As a retailer, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes. Well, a couple of years ago, my brother was diagnosed with cancer. And I don't know if you've ever had a relative who's severely sick, but you get desperate.
Yes.
I would have done anything to save his life. I mean, anything. That's how much I loved him. And it didn't work, obviously. And but during the course of this, I had this dream, and out of that, my book was born, and it's called Divinity. And this is issue number 1.
Yep, I'm going to pop that up on the screen big
Yep.
time there for people.
Divinity number 1. It's about an 11-year-old girl who, after a near-death experience, gets the ability to heal. And soon after that, her parents are mysteriously murdered. And so her 26-year-old half-brother, who is a Marine, gets a hardship discharge and has to come home and raise her, which he's very resentful of. These guys are 15 years apart. They hardly know each other. And suddenly he's saddled with an 11-year-old girl who does not take orders like any Marine. She'd rather say, "I hate you." And he doesn't know how to handle that. But he starts looking into the death of his father and stepmother, and discovers that their death is very, very fishy. And about that time, and at the end of issue 1, if you guys read it, things happen, and they end up having to go on the run. And then in issue 2, and this, by the way, is a Jeff Johnson cover, which he did for me for issue number 2. We see that they run into all kinds of trouble, and she ends up getting kidnapped. And now we're into issue number 3, which is kickstarting right now. Divinity won the Independent Comics Award for the Best New Independent of 2020. So, and I've had a lot of feedback, and people are just absolutely loving it. It's not only a story where you've got an evil cabal who's after this girl, but we've got a brother and a sister who don't know each other, who have to find their way back to each other as a family. We've got best friend of Zach. Zach is the older brother. Divinity, or Vinny, is the little girl. And Olivia Barnes is Zach's old Marine buddy who comes along to help him. So we've got this trio of guys. Now, think Firestarter meets The Fugitive, only instead of a Firestarter, she's a healer. We've got a little girl with powers, and they're on the run. It'll be a road story. You know, they're on the road, they're on the run. So the episodes, the comics themselves will deal with smaller subplots of the people they meet along the way, the trouble they get into, and an overarching plot of this evil cabal who are constantly after her. Where was I? Oh, so the Kickstarter right now has number 3, and we have got so much original art. We had so much original art that we couldn't even put it on the Kickstarter site. We had to put a link to a separate Flickr page, because we've got for Divinity alone, we've got a ton of the penciled pages from Alex Sarabia, my penciler from Mexico. We've got a cover from Ken Hooper. We've got a Dean Zachary cover. We've got Rick Hoberg piece. This is a Mark Nelson piece.
Oh my God, I love Mark Nelson. He was here at our local con last year.
Oh, wow.
That dude is amazing.
This is for sale for Divinity. That's just Divinity. All 5 books have original art for sale from somebody or other.
Mike Wesolowski, are you hearing this? I know this is your jam, brother.
Yeah, this is an amazing piece. And if nobody buys it, it's going on my wall. And I mean, Mark Nelson's an old friend who used to live up here in Madison with me. So I've known him forever. And he was kind enough to do this piece for me. Rick Hoberg was kind enough to do a piece for me of Zach.
There goes Mike. Loud and clear.
Yes.
Oh, he's hearing it. Yeah. So, Mark Nelson, he came to our local con, and we were talking about his fee for coming and that kind of stuff. And he's like, tell you what, screw the fee. Set me up so I can teach a class.
Yep.
And I'm like, wait, what?
He used to teach locally.
Yeah. He's a phenomenal teacher. You can just hear it when he talks about art. So he came on, and he was talking he taught. But we had like 9 people in that class, I think, and it was fantastic. Uh, but he was doing his little series of mermaid drawings, little
Yeah.
sketches at that point. I've got 3 of those now, I think. Um, I got him to actually do a commission for me for a role playing game that I've been working on, and I was like, I need this critter drawn, and I need somebody who can draw this critter. You're the man for drawing this critter, and he did a phenomenal job.
He donated this for me, so
He's a sweetheart.
it's a
God love that
phenomenal.
guy.
He is, and I've known him forever. Not only can you get Divinity the back issues on Indie Planet, but you can get every back issue of every Silverline book there is on the Kickstarter as an add-on.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this right quick because I'm on the website, and for anybody that wants to see exactly what I'm talking about, I'm on Divinity 1, and
you want to pop it up and show your screen, Alan?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, I can do that. Show exactly what I'm talking about. Share my screen. I want to share that screen, and we're going to do this.
See, Alan's the technology person. That's not me.
Now,
So,
Divinity.
And my question is, where it says you've got print on demand and retro cover, what's the difference between the two for anybody that might be ordering, like me here, as soon as we get done with the show?
Print on demand is the color version. Retro version is simply black and white, no colors.
Gotcha.
It's just the pencils and inks. Issue number 1, Steve Matson. Do you remember him back from Boris the Bear?
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, this was while I was still trying to figure out how to do coloring. He colored this by hand. Issue number 1.
Wow.
As of issue number 2, those are my colors right there. As of issue number 2, I took over the coloring. And the inks and the writing, and R.A. Jones helps me script it. I am a good writer. I am not a good scripter.
It's a world of difference.
It is a huge world of difference. And I've known R.A. for 30 plus years, so he was happy to jump on and help me script Divinity. I have had just phenomenal feedback on it, which is startling because this is my first creator-owned book right out of the chute, and I've gotten incredible feedback. Maggie Thompson wrote up a great review on it. So did Kevin Van Hook, the creator of Bloodshot.
Mm-hmm.
He loved it. He did a great review too. So I'm very flattered. I mean, I kind of knew what I was doing because I've been doing comics for 30 plus years, but still, that doesn't make you a good writer. It might make,
no, you're 100% right about that.
But I think what helps Divinity is because there's so much inspiration and heart that went into it, because the impetus for me to write it was so gut-wrenching for myself. It was in it. I wanted to heal my brother, and
it's clear from the way you described the book. You didn't describe a plot. You didn't describe this evil, wicked cabal. You described the characters, which tells you right from the jump, this is a character-driven story where the plot and those other things are almost incidental. It's getting to know these characters, getting invested in these characters, and seeing where they go and what happens and how they respond. That all makes a world of difference. You can have a great plot that is you don't care because you don't care about the characters. If you don't care about the characters, the game's over.
Right. And Zach, he's totally lost. He'd rather be back in battle than trying to raise an 11-year-old girl. And
I have we have a Redstone Arsenal right here in Huntsville, so we have a big military presence here in town. And a lot of these guys, after they retire and they transition into the defense contracting and all this kind of thing, I've heard multiple of these guys say, I'd rather be getting shot at than working in this office. So I understand what he's saying because I've heard that come from a lot of different people. Like, I would just rather be getting shot at. I'd rather have some sergeant breathing down my neck than doing this.
Well, I'm actually a military mom.
Oh, awesome.
So my son has been full-time air guard for 20 years now.
Oh, so you're going to be celebrating tomorrow.
So yes, I am.
Veterans Day, everyone.
And he has, and a lot of people say, "Oh, the Guard, they don't do anything." I beg to differ. He has been deployed to Afghanistan twice, Iraq 3 times, Qatar, Poland, Japan. He's been deployed a lot. Just because he's in the Guard doesn't mean he doesn't see service. But it teaches you a whole different mindset. Having knowing somebody's out there that you love is under the gun. But it's also the reason why I wanted to make Zach a military man, because I wanted to honor the service. And I also wanted to show that, he is so much in love with the military. And then, he's all spit and polish and the Marine, and I say jump, you say so how high. And he comes home and here's this little girl who's like, you're not the boss of me.
I've never met a Marine yet that is an ex-Marine.
Yeah. And
all Marines are still Marines.
I'll give you a little sneak peek into the next arc after issue 4. Start up a new subplot, and Zach tells Olivia that she doesn't have to take on this burden with him. She's not related to them, and she says, "No, I'm all in." And he goes, "No, I can't put you under this type of danger and responsibility." And she goes, "What are you going to tell her the first time she gets her period?" And he goes, "Okay, you can come along."
I don't want to have that discussion. Not me. That's
so,
awesome.
I'm very real about it. I'm a mother of a son and a daughter, so I got both perspectives: the military son and the moody daughter. So I got it all covered.
So,
I have an
sounds like you
11-year-old.
captured all of that in one book. That's awesome.
You have an 11-year-old girl?
My daughter turns 12 this month.
Oh,
so,
you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about.
His daughter is awesome. She's
one minute they're a child, and the next moment they're a woman, and then they flip-flop back and forth. You never know what you're going to get from one minute to the next, whether you're going to get a child having a tantrum or a woman saying, "I know all about that."
Well, we're at the One Chip Challenge Saturday, and she's there with me. And I, put my arm around her, kiss her on top of the head, and she starts screaming, "Stranger danger, I don't know this man."
Oh my God.
And I literally, and the look on Greg Middleton's face was great, because
Jeff Middleton.
I pushed her toward Greg Middleton, and I went, "He's
Jeff,
a warrior.
Not
See
Greg.
how far
It's
that
Jeff.
gets you."
It's Jeff Middleton.
Yeah, Jeffrey Middleton.
Now, RA, I had to kind of steer RA. I can't blame her a little bit, because the first issue I was like, "You're writing her too. It's too young. She's not going to act like that. She's 11 is not a baby."
I find in general that's something a lot of comic books have a hard time with children. They have a hard time drawing children. They have a hard time writing children. They either write adults who are just really small, or they write absolute babies. I'm like, I'm 7, 8 years old. I knew how to speak and form full sentences. I wasn't just like sulking in a corner going, "Want toys?" I mean,
yeah, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who speaks in full sentences. So yeah.
I'm 49, and I sit in a corner and scream, "I want toys."
Yeah, but that's why you're at work.
Exactly.
But 11 is that really awkward age where half the time they want to be a child and half the time they want to be an adult. Yep. And they can flip on a dime, and you don't know.
They reserve the right to tell you which one at any given point.
Right, and you can't figure out. Your head is spinning constantly because you don't know which one is going to come out at any. It's like The Exorcist. You don't know what's going to come out at any second.
So let me ask you, so folks have an idea when they're looking, because I know we've already had comments. Several folks are looking for back issues here. How long is each book?
It's a full
story.
24 pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys go back hit the Kickstarter, and you can get the back issues through the Kickstarter, right?
Mm-hmm. Every issue. And anything else on that Kickstarter too. I highly recommend Roland's Trumps. That is a really good book. Or it sounds like when you say Trumps, are we talking politics? No. We're talking the card games, where he's got a world where there's 4 competing factions, and guess what the 4 are? And guess it's the hearts, the clubs, diamonds, and the spades. And they're all fighting to see who's going to be the trump. It's a war story. So it's
makes
fascinating.
total sense.
I love it.
There's any number of things that he could have chosen. We're red. Well, we're blue. We're green. We're Slytherin. We're what? Trumps. That works. It's a card. Everybody's used to the cards. Everybody knows the metaphors. That's cool.
And of course, there's always the Joker is the wild card, so he slips between all 4 suits. So it's a great book. I'm very much enjoying it.
So the Joker is wild. Is that?
Joker's wild.
So you said something just a minute ago. As of right now, Divinity is going to be 4 issues, but there's plans for on down the road. Are you going to do just like, say, 4-issue miniseries, take like a couple of months off, do 4 issues? I mean, are you going to follow that format or? Well,
the reason that they're 4-issue, they're not exactly minis, but they wrap up a certain arc in 4 stories. Like I said, this first 4 issues that you're getting introduced to our grand evil cabal. And then the second set of 4 books will put them in a different situation while they're running from the evil cabal, but they run into trouble. If you remember watching the Fugitive series or any of those like Supernatural, where they're on the road, they're on the run, and you have Monster of the Week stories, but there's always this
overarching story, right?
Yeah. Overarching story. That's the format that I'm going for.
As long as at the end of every episode I can hear do 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 do.
Yes.
And I can see Bill Bixby walking off into that's perfect.
Yes. And the reason it's in 4-issue subplots is because 4 issues is perfect for collecting it into a graphic novel.
Yep.
So, but it's not going to be the next 4 issues is Divinity. We're starting out renumbering all over again. No, it's going to be Divinity number 5, 6, 7, 8, but it's going to be, wrapped up in 4 issues, this particular subplot. And we go on to meet the next subplot while we're still on the run from the evil cabal.
Perfect.
So it's a road show.
I love those stories.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be very respectful of your time, and we've already kept you for an hour. So Alan, you had some questions. You had your comics of the week. You had some questions, and we want to get your take on Alan's comics. And I have a couple too, and I'd like to get your take on those if you've got the time to hang out for a few more minutes.
You bet. Let's go for it.
Okay, so normally what I do is I'll pick 2 comics that came out the week before, so I'm not spoiling anything for people that are reading on the people that are going to read them. Chances are they've already read them this week. So, and there should still be some copies left. Number 1, right off the bat, Batman and Joker, The Deadly Duo.
By Mark Silvestri, yep.
Yeah. This book was absolutely flipping amazing. He delivers on every single page of this book.
Well, Mark Silvestri, first of all, is a goddamn genius.
Yeah,
I love his art is so organic.
And I'm going to say one thing about the story, and I've actually got some of the art from this book loaded up that I wanted to ask you about. The book, what it is setting up is basically Harley Quinn has been kidnapped. And as the Joker puts it in the book, I don't like it when people take my things. He enlists the help of Batman. Wow. They have a really cool exchange toward the end of the book. And it is setting up for very possibly one of the best dynamics that we've seen between Batman and Joker in a long time. And it's one of those where there's one particular phrase that I want the Joker to say. I know it's not going to happen, and only a few people are going to get what I'm about to say, but I really want the line, "Where's my GD car, Bruce?" in this comic book.
Yeah, that one.
That actually comes from a particular cartoon, the Harley Quinn cartoon series. But what I wanted to ask you as far as the art is concerned is, let me pull the page up right quick. As an inker.
Are you pulling up the Batcave page? No, okay.
Yes, this one right here. So when you're sent something like this, and
I cry.
you know, I was not really,
That's a lot.
yeah, I was not really and truly thinking of like say the digital age. But let's say you're sent something like this, and we're still doing things on. You're still doing it with paintbrushes on paper.
Mhm.
When we start looking at Gotham City, how much of this is the actual penciler, and how much of this is the actual inker? Can you walk us through that process on
A
some?
lot of this one is also the colorist.
Yeah, the
The
coloring on
colorists
this
make a
is
world of difference on this.
amazing. It's a lot of it does come down to the inker in the city scene, because the penciler may put all that detail in, but if the inker doesn't feel like doing it, then you're going to lose a lot of it. It's also up to the inker to fade the lines in certain places, like we're down here where the light is shining. You have to know where to fade it out, where to put your heavy blacks, and texturize it. I love texturizing things. That's a big thing that's a lot of times left up to the discretion of the inker. Now, I can't get a real good look at this because my screen is so small. So I'm not a lot
If
of
I were an
help.
inker and you handed me this, I'd probably would cry. This is
I've seen worse.
there's all this stuff with the foreground element of that first panel with all the cats and the
Mhm.
silhouettes there, and then you've got the light source that's all over the place. So you got heavy shadows in the back, but you have heavy shadows in the front. So you're seeing the middle lit up that way, and then you got those clouds doing all that crazy stuff up
Yeah.
there.
Now I have to be honest here and say that panels 2, 3, and 4 would have been brush heavy, but I would have been probably using a micron pen for a lot of the city, just
So,
because.
okay, and I know this is going to sound strange, but I'm going to do this to the other book too, so we can kind of give the uneducated folks like me a little bit of perspective here. If this was on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be the difficulty level when it comes to inking on something like this?
Probably a 9
Oh, wow.
for
I
me.
believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, for somebody, legendary, they'd probably go, it's a 5 at most. But for me, it would be a 9.
Okay, so I mean, this was one of those that as soon as I found out you were coming on the show, it was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely asking her about this book, because the art is like this throughout the entire book. I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
and that just makes me so envious. Sylvester is one of those artists that other artists go, why am I even bothering?
He's amazing.
I know, and his lines are very organic, which I can't do. I'm way too anal. I'm in controlled. I actually envy people like Bill Reinhold and Sienkiewicz and
God, getting Bill Sienkiewicz on here is one of my dreams. That dude is something else.
Or Dennis Cowan. They could just slap it down and it looks like $1 million. Me, I gotta, I'm very, very controlled, and they have a freedom that I lack, because they just go at it, and damn the torpedoes, they just lay it out there on the page, and I have great admiration for that kind of confidence. I don't have it.
I wish I had this picture here so I could show it to you, but it's on the wall at my store. I met Sienkiewicz at Wizard World Chicago, and I want to say 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. And I asked him to do a sketch for me, and he's like, what do you want me to draw? I was like, I don't care. Whatever you want to draw is perfectly fine for me. I said, all I ask is make it out to Haven Comics so I can put it up on the wall at the store. And he's like, okay. So he's looking up and talking to me while he's drawing, and the pen never left the page.
Yeah,
And
so
it's messy as all get out. It's messy as it could possibly be, but it's phenomenal.
But it makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And he drew this Hulk creature. It's like a combination of the Hulk and a gorilla. He drew the Hulk without looking at it. The pen never left the paper while he was talking to me. It's stunning. It's ridiculous.
And even though I've been doing this for 30 plus years, I don't have that kind of confidence. I have to study my lines as I'm putting them down. I always have. That's, one of the things that people say about my inking is, oh, her lines are so crisp and clean and sharp. Like, yeah, but that's because they're so anal. Whereas as like Sienkiewicz is just, and Cowan and Silvestri and Reinhold, they are just so confident that they just sling those lines down and they know what they're doing. And it starts out looking like a bunch of squiggly lines and blobs. And when it's done, it's a masterpiece. And this is just, I wish I could be that free and carefree about my work, but I'm not. I stress every line.
Not being an artist, I love them both equally. I've got a Mike Zeck drawing at the store that John Beatty was there, and John Beatty inked it. And he and John Beatty and Mike Zeck have worked together so long that they're just like peanut butter and jelly. And so John Beatty's inks are very like what you described. It was a time-consuming process, but he inked it so meticulously. And that page is so clean. It looks like it came off a printer. There was no way that was done on the fly at a convention, sitting at a table.
That's what my pages look like. They're very clean.
And that's exactly what this looks like. It was so clean. It was scary. I'm like, how did you do that? Are you I wanted to peel the skin back and make sure he wasn't actually a robot. Because it was so absolutely pristine and precise. And it was phenomenal.
Mark Farmer's like that too. His lines
Mark Farmer and Alan Davis, boy, that's a pair that just is like, phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the second book, I do find it kind of funny because you actually somewhat referenced this art style earlier in the show when you said it was image art. The second book is actually called Hell to Pay by Image Comics.
Okay.
This book right here, I mean, as a writer, I mean, you can definitely testify to this. You've only have so many pages to really set up your story with a brand new story and draw the reader in. They literally nailed it. This was a fantastic read, introducing new characters, a different take on what hell actually is. The premise of the book is there was an uprising in hell many years ago. One soul escaped with what they call hell coins. And if a person on earth has one of the coins, they can literally summon the demon, and the demon has to do exactly what that person wants. And that coin is payment. Well, they're called the Shrouded College. You don't know much about them yet. They have basically recruited two mortals that it's looking like they saved them from some type of accident. We just haven't got that far in the story yet. And it's these two mortals' jobs to hunt down all 666 coins that made it out of hell.
See, now I'm going to have to go get this now because that sounds fascinating.
It is a fascinating book. It's really good.
This was a great read.
It's Charles Soule. He's a great writer.
Yeah, but the art is so radically different than Silvestri's. This is the type of art you're getting. You're getting that image art, kind of like you referenced earlier. So as an inker, when you're looking, and the tablets kind of jumped out at me, it's something kind of small that most people aren't going to look at. When an artist sends you something like this, when you've got the tablet, and I'm actually using,
I break out the crow quill is what I do.
Yeah, I'm using my cursor like y'all can actually see it. I can point it out to y'all with my cursor because I'm a damn idiot. But like on the tablets, how do you add depth and perception to something like that as an inker?
A lot of what pages like this are relying on these days is the colorist. So the pencils and inks are at a minimum on this, and they are real, that's nothing against that style because that's the same style I use for Divinity. I use a very simple kind of throwback style on Divinity, and it relies a lot on the colors. which is what this page does. So there's not, I mean, a lot of image books, you'll see a lot of lines in the people's faces, and they avoid that here. And especially the females. I do not like lines in the females' faces. It makes them, it ages them. The tablets, what I would do is I would use a crow quill and I would make the initial letters, and then I would very, very lightly next to each letter put a shadow line. When I say shadow line, I mean another line as if right next to the thicker line, so
to give
that
it some dimension.
To give it some dimension, so the colorist can go in there and lay some either light or shade against that very thin parallel line.
Are there any colorists? Colorists, I have learned that it's, I guess colorists and letterers have been the two that it's taken me the longest to catch up on as a reader and a fan for my whole life. But the first comic book that I ever looked at where the colorist just leapt off the page at me and smacked me in the face and said, I am such a huge part of this book and it wouldn't look the same without me, was a cross-gen book called El Cazador. And it was this, the cover for the first issue was stunning, but there was this 2-page spread of these two big galleon kind of ships. It's a pirate book, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's the sky, the sunset, the ocean, the trees, a shark in the water, all this stuff. And the colorist, it was Justin Ponser, and he just jumped off the page and smacked me in the face. And I have really looked at colorists very differently ever since, as not just a thing, but as like, wow, this is radically different because of them.
I'm coloring my own book now, and I'm coloring a couple of other books for Silverline, and I am still learning. I'm very new at it. And fortunately, we do have with Silverline, we have another old Malibu colorist, Roberta Conroy, from the old Malibu color pool. And she's kind of my mentor, so I ask her a lot of questions. Oh. But the one thing that page that you were just showing there was the subtlety of the colors, and I'm still working on that. I love muted tones.
So just like with the first page, if on a scale of 1 to 10, how would this one fall in there for an inker?
3, maybe 2. That's that's an easy page.
Cool.
A lot of empty space.
I love on that the use of that staircase.
Mm-hmm.
And the figures, but the way that they use the panels to break it up so it looks like, so you get the action in all those different locations on the same staircase. I love that kind of trick in comics. It's a unique thing to this medium that I love.
There was a lot of blank space in there, but it wasn't wasted. No, because the colorist threw such wonderful highlights and tones into that blank space. It gave you the impression that there's this big, huge underground space.
And it gets warmer as it goes down.
That they're descending. So nice. Even though the inker doesn't have a lot to do because there's a lot of blank space, the colorist makes up for that.
See, and that entire book is like that from beginning to end. I mean, you get that vibe throughout the whole thing. And Josh, I don't know if you ever read it. To me,
yeah, it's fantastic.
I don't know if you ever read this particular book, but to me, Hell to Pay succeeds where Hell Cop completely failed.
It's very atmospheric.
Yes, this is anybody that wants to pick this up, this one right here, it didn't grab a hold of me as much as Vanish grabbed a hold of me. But this story had me drawn in within about the first 3 pages. I mean, they jump right into it, and it's a really, really good story. So yeah, that was my 2 books for the week. Hell to Pay by Image Comics, and then this little thing with a couple of characters nobody's probably ever heard of before.
Yeah, I got to tell you,
that's an artist nobody's heard of before.
Yeah, an artist. I hope the kid has a future one day.
Yes.
Keep trying, kid. You'll get there one day.
I follow him on Facebook, and he throws up stuff every once in a while. I'm like, what? I should just give up and go home.
He is phenomenal. All right, I've got a couple of comics to show off. I don't have them pulled up the way that you do, but this one right here came out this week. Fantastic Four. It's a new #1. They're relaunching it. Normally, I would not be a fan of that because I'm sick and tired of the relaunches like everybody else is. That's just irritating. This is a story that only features Ben Grimm and Alicia. They're like driving somewhere. They stop off for the night in a little town that is on Groundhog Day, essentially. It keeps going through this one night in 1947. And it's interesting. It's cute. It's not like earth-shattering, but it's really cool. But my favorite thing about this whole book is that it's a one and done story. It's a it's a contained story in this issue.
Self-contained.
It leads somewhere. The very last page is like, oh, there's some other stuff that's happening. But the best thing is this page here, the Fantastic Fan page. You can't read it on here, so I'm just going to tell you his 4 main bullet points about the Fantastic Four. This is from the writer. #1, the Fantastic Four are fun. It's not angsty. It's fun. We have so much angst in comics now. It's like, can we get back to sometimes just being fun? #2, the Fantastic Four are adventurers. Yes, they are not superheroes. They are explorers and adventurers. That's what makes them interesting, is that Reed and his big brain can figure out ways to travel to wackadoo places like the Negative Zone. And
but he's never going to equal Tony Stark as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's fair. #3, the Fantastic Four can do anything between all their powers and everything. They can do it so cool. And #4, the Fantastic Four are accessible. Every book should be accessible to the first-time reader, which is what all comics used to be, and now they're not. We got away from the first panel of every page. Everybody says, "Hi, Storm, what are you doing?" "Well, gee, Beast, I'm going to the library." Now they just talk, and you're expected to know who they are without them saying, right? The writer has the right attitude to write Fantastic Four. This first issue was a solid issue, and I'm expecting him to do more things, and I'm really looking forward to it. From Boom Studios, Behold Behemoth.
Wow. I like Boom.
I like Boom quite a lot. This
another
story,
old Malibuer.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be flown out for the 25th anniversary celebration of Malibu Comics to San Diego Comic-Con last year, or a few years ago. And a bunch of us got together on stage and off, and it was so much fun. I would love to do that again if they'll fly me.
Man, I would love to be a fly on the wall in that room because I love Malibu. This is a phenomenal book. Post-apocalyptic.
I love post-apocalyptic stuff.
This is not one of those cases where you get a cool cover that gets your attention and then you open the book and the art is something totally different. That always drives me bonkers. What you see on this cover is what you get throughout the book, and this is very cool.
I'm a quasi-prepper, so you know.
Right?
I love
that's
that
fair.
sort of thing.
I know this is going to be on your list next week, Alan, but I have to jump your gun a little bit for you. Matt Rosenberg does a great job with Wildcats. He's a phenomenal writer, and I'm really glad to see him on this book. This was fun. I didn't think it was the best comic I've ever read by any means, but this was a lot of fun, and I think it's a good start for Wildcats. I hope people pick it up. I don't know if they will, but I hope they will.
Everybody that I know that has read it has loved it.
Now, I'm a huge Disney nut, as everybody knows. So I haven't got to read this yet, but I did pick this up. The Disney Brothers, The Fabulous Story of Walt and Roy.
I did some Gargoyles work when I was with Marvel for Disney.
That's so great. I love how they've got Mickey and Donald there as.
That's so cool.
And then the back cover.
Uncle Walt.
Shouldn't we be getting close to Gargoyles coming out?
Yes, Gargoyles comes out in about a month and a half.
I knew we were getting closer.
What's particularly cool about that is the new Gargoyle series is being written by the original creator of the cartoon.
Really?
Yes, and it's a continuation of the story.
Cool.
It picks up where the story left off. There's a little time gap, and then it picks up and keeps going. It's going to be very, very good. It's being published by Dynamite, which is interesting. Disney is using Dynamite for right instead of
That is
Marvel.
interesting.
Why?
But yeah, that's a
Dynamite
really good
is
question.
publishing Gargoyles, and they're publishing the new Darkwing Duck series. But y'all, this is a book. I know nothing about this guy other than I saw this art and I felt an absolute need to pick this up. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Who puts that out?
Isenbashi.
Isenbashi? Who puts it out?
This is by Oni Press.
Oni Press. I love my indies. I mean, nothing against DC and Marvel. They kept me employed for a very long time, but they are constrained to their corporate stockholders. And I think they're stuck in a rut. Whereas it's indies like Oni and Boom, Jeff Smith's Bone, those things are so fresh.
AWA Studios has put out some amazing indie content. They are just killing it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly believe that the indies are the future of comics, because there is nothing so fresh as what's happening in the indies right now. All the stories that are being told. I still collect DC and Marvel books, right? But you can only tell the origin story so many times, and they've been telling the same stories of these. Oh, that's really nice.
It's just beautiful. This art is gorgeous. And I had to pick it up. I'm a sucker for this kind of shogun samurai kind of thing with supernatural flair. I'm an absolute sucker for that, and this is fantastic.
Barb, if you're a fan of Frank Frazetta, Opus Comics, they're another indie company. They are, I think we're getting ready to issue 7 should be coming out. They have taken Death Dealer and turned it into a comic book series.
Seriously?
And it is so good. So good.
And that's an iconic character.
They are going to attempt to build an entire universe out of his characters.
That's some great art there. And it's gray washes too.
The whole thing. I was going to say, what's gray wash? Now you know.
No.
That guy probably got a really hard lesson in gray wash right there. Yeah, it's not black and white, but it doesn't have color either. It is all gray wash.
Gray tones.
The whole book, and it's gorgeous.
Yes, Tots agrees. The Death Dealer stuff is great. I know we're approaching an hour and a half, but Barb, I have one silly question that may not mean anything to you, but I just kind of think it's cool.
Okay.
Going back to your Malibu days, you said that you worked on Nightman. What was it like for you working on that comic book and then all of a sudden seeing a TV show based on Nightman? Even though it was a short-lived show, what was it like?
Well, I only did one issue of Nightman over Dean Zachary, but it was fantastic looking. And then to see something come out on TV, I'm like, I worked on that book, So
kids, come look.
Yes, and that happened to me too on Lost in Space, the Bill Mumy and Miguel Ferrer issue. They featured that in the TV Guide one time, and it actually had, if you took a microscope and you looked at the very bottom, you could see my name and credits. I'm like, I'm in the TV Guide, So I was.
Now I can hear it, Tots.
Yep, I'm also on the International Movie Database, so there you go.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I did the Halloween special of Angry Beavers for Nickelodeon, and I was on a documentary about comics. So I actually made it onto the International Movie Database. So, but as awesome. Far as Nightman was concerned, I would have loved to have seen that go a little farther, but it was a little cheesy. the TV show.
Yeah,
It was
come
the
on,
best.
it's the 90s.
But then nothing comics related was the best back then. I mean, can we all remember
No.
David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury?
Oh, Lord have
You
mercy.
know, yes.
I tell you, the first movie they really got it, the comics right was Blade.
Yes.
From a superhero perspective. And that's because they didn't try to turn him into a superhero. They didn't put him in spandex. They didn't do any of that stuff. They just said, here's what he looks like. Here's the world. We're going to go with it. And Blade was phenomenal.
Yeah, I
and
very
it showed
much
you what
enjoyed
was
that movie.
possible.
Well, you know, with Nightman, they ultimately tried to draw us in with the fact that he was driving a Prowler. And we still hadn't really seen those, you know?
They approached Roland and tried to option Cat and Mouse from him. Hollywood, with they being Hollywood. And he was, like very flattered and everything. And then they told him, I got to go soon too.
Yeah.
Then they told him what they wanted to do with it. And the one iconic thing about Cat and Mouse is it's takes place in New Orleans. Well, they were going to move it to LA, and then they were going to change this, and then we're going to change that. And
so at that point, it's not Cat and Mouse anymore. Why do you want it?
That's exactly right. And he actually turned it down. He had the chance to make money on it, but he said, "Nope, that's not my book."
I 100% applaud that kind of integrity to say no, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Stephen Butler just did a Cat and Mouse commission for somebody the other day. He was showing me. God, hadn't seen those characters in a bit, so that was really cool.
You can get those on the Kickstarter too.
See, guys, how can you turn this Kickstarter down?
That's right. You can get Cat and Mouse up through number 3. We're almost done with number 4. So
I can tell you, there will be a few sales off of this tonight for sure. I know several people who are going to be straight to that Kickstarter to pick these books up.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciated being on. I had a lot of fun. I hope I wasn't a boring guest.
Oh my God, no! Are you kidding? I could talk to you all night. I so appreciate the work that you have done. It's one of those cases where you go back and say, well, all right, here's this creator. What all have they done? Oh my God, they did this. They did so many things that were part of my comics collection over the course of forever. And your name has been right there for the longest time.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I've been around. I'm an old fogey by now. But and I am going to turn this right back on you. I appreciate the fans and I will never charge for an autograph, because if it weren't for fans like you guys and everybody that comes and asks to see me at a show, I wouldn't have a roof over my head. I wouldn't have food on the table. I wouldn't have put my kids through college, So I'm grateful to you guys. So.
Well, do you do a whole lot of shows? Because we've got a really good show here in town. And I happen to know the guy who runs it. So,
where are you guys located?
Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, it's a little far away. I do a lot of local shows because they're within driving distance, or they're within, can go down to Iowa and visit family and stuff like that. We usually try to stay within a 3 to 4 hour driving distance right now, because nobody's willing to fly us anywhere. And I say us, that's hubby and myself, because he's my assistant at these shows. So
well, he fills in all those blacks for you. He's earned it.
Yeah. Well, while I'm talking to the fans, he's taking the money and stuff and bagging and boarding the comics or sliding the prints into he's doing all that stuff back there, and I'm just.
I'm going to need to know exactly which books he worked on with you, because I need his autograph on them too.
That's right. That's right. And then send those bad boys off to CGC, and they'll be like, who?
I know.
His name's not on here, but okay. No, that's legitimate. That's fair.
Yeah.
I've had to fill in blacks for an artist once, and I don't envy anybody who does that. That's harder than it looks, and
it is.
You have to get it right, because if you screw that up, the whole thing is messed up.
He's the wind beneath my wings.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. It was a blast talking with you.
Yeah, I had fun tonight.
And we're going to all head straight over to that Kickstarter and pick up some back issues too.
And some original art, you guys. There is so much. You have to look through it and then just be tempted by something.
That's very easy.
There's quite the price range, from like $50 to get original pencils to $300 to get a Mark Nelson piece. So
Well, if you ever find yourself down at my store, you'll see that I'm a big fan of original art. I have it splashed all over the walls, and people get on to me for it because they're like, "You should have things up there that you're willing to sell." And I'm like, "It's my store. I'm going to put this art up here because I love it."
I have people that say I can't buy any more prints or original art because I have every bit of space used. And I said, you see these portfolios that I have my art
Yep.
in? Fill those, put them on your coffee table, let people flip through them. They're like, I never thought of that. Yeah, it's a coffee table book.
Yep, and you can also change out the things that you're showing off too. You can move them around.
All right, guys. It was
Thank you
great.
so much. You
I
have
had
a
lot of
wonderful night.
fun.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you, y'all. That was awesome.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
She knows her stuff so well, and she has been around so long. She's worked with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
God, that's great. When I asked if she would come on, and I started digging into, I was interested because she's a creator and she's doing stuff now, but I know I had seen her name over the course of the past several years. And when I went back and looked at what all she's done, she has worked on so many books. And all of that stuff she did for Malibu Ultraverse, I have every last bit of it. And I read it, I loved it, and I need desperately to go back and reread my Ultraverse books because they're not collected in trade anywhere. You can't find them anywhere, and they're so good.
See, I've got some of those books. I think I was going through, this was several years ago, and I was trying to clean out a ton of stuff in my collection that really didn't fit my collection. And I think either Justin or Jake up at the shop ended up with all my Mantra books. Because one of them was a big fan of Mantra.
Yeah.
And
such
then,
a good book.
Do what?
It was such a good book.
Yeah. And then, but I mean, at one point, I literally had 5 long boxes that was just miscellaneous stuff. There was no rhyme nor reason to any of it. You know how we end up, especially when we're getting older, we're like, where did all this stuff come from?
Yep.
Yep.
Why did I buy this? Yeah.
And then I went through a massive phase in the 90s where, I mean, I've always enjoyed indie comics. Because like she said, and she was 100% right, I mean, there's more freedom with indies. There's no corporate guidelines they've got to stick to.
Well, there's no editor sitting at the top saying, well, but it has to jive with this idea over here. It has to look like this because that's our signature look.
Yep.
You can do anything with it.
And as bad as it sounds, and the vast majority of people that are watching this are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. Thank God. You're going to know what I'm talking about, unfortunately. I went so far down the rabbit hole with Verotic comics.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were sleazy books, but they were dark. They were gritty stories. I mean, they were like, it was demons and hell and everything else, but the stories some of them were so good. Jaguar God, to this day.
Wasn't Verotic one of the companies? Didn't Danzig do a book with them?
Glenn Danzig actually owned Verotic Comics. Him and somebody else. We met them at Dragon Con. He was there, and it was right as I think Jaguar God was on issue 3 or 4, and that was one of the first books that they come out with.
I remember that was actually a pretty good book. I remember that.
Oh my God, it was a great book, and the art. I mean, the art was amazing in all those books. So, when a lot of people were really jumping on board with Malibu and Ultraverse and all that, I was so far off a rabbit hole with other indie comics that I just really and truly didn't go that far into. I mean, I read Prime when it first come out, some of that stuff. Freak Force. Well, no, Freak Force was Image. What was that other one?
Freaks.
Yeah, Freaks.
That was kind of their answer to X-Men. Sludge was kind of their answer to Man-Thing, Swamp Thing.
Was it Plasm?
No, Warriors of Plasm was Jim Shooter's spin-off book after he left Valiant and he started Defiant. That was Warriors of Plasm, was a Jim Shooter book. But yeah, that's Man, I love talking comics. I love talking comics with comic book creators, especially ones like her, who's not necessarily a household name, but should be.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to ask her really about. And it's one of those things that kind of feels like you're expected to ask, and sometimes maybe like, what was it like to be a woman in the comics industry at that time period? Because there weren't a lot. There were several, but there weren't a ton. The ratio was very wildly different, and I have to think it was not the most hospitable environment.
Was it? What was the lady's name? And I want to say, was it the 80s? Early 80s, maybe somewhere right around there. She was Marvel. It might even been before that. But Marvel wouldn't have gone the route that they went with a lot of their books. She was an editor.
Yeah, well, a lot of women editors, like Louise Simonson was a writer and an editor.
That's who I'm thinking of.
And she made a world of difference. But you had comic artists like Colleen Doran and Jan Duursema. Lord, I forget her name, who she redid the face on the King Size Hulk Annual #1, that iconic cover of Steranko, where he drew Hulk bending, like leaning over in the words, like he's holding up the title block, and it was breaking. And she redid his face, and I cannot remember her name right now. I'm just going to regret that forever. But Ramona Fraden, I mean, there have been women in comics for a really long time, but just not very many. And so I do wonder how she, if she perceived anything environmentally that way. But we didn't get a chance to talk about it because we were talking about all the cool stuff she's doing now. And I got to tell you, I love that pitch for the Divinity book. I'm all about a character-driven story like that.
Yeah, and the prices on that Indie Planet, they weren't that bad. And I'm just gonna go ahead and order the.
Well, just go to the Kickstarter, back the Kickstarter, and get the back issues. That's what I'm gonna do.
You can get the back. I haven't scrolled all the way through the Kickstarter yet. I didn't realize you could get the back issues on it.
Yeah, she said you can get all the back issues through the Kickstarter. So you can get them all in one fell swoop.
Might have to do that. Oh, since she's no longer on the show with us, and I didn't want to embarrass her. I really don't care if I embarrass Nick Ellis, but Nick Ellis sent me a text message that I almost started laughing when he sent it, and all I could do was agree with him. Nick Ellis had been listening to the entire show, and you know why he was listening to the show?
Why?
As he put it in the text message, her voice is so soothing.
I have to agree with that. She sounds like she could do like commercials, or she could be that voice on the phone that's telling you, it's okay. Just give us your address. The police will be right there.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm not going to panic anymore.
Yep.
Mike, you're dead on. Yeah. Caliber did some really good stuff. They had some stuff that was definitely on the edge, but they had some really good books back in the day. Joe Pruitt did some books for Caliber.
Arctic Press was another one. They weren't that sleazy though.
And Antarctic Press.
Yeah, Antarctic Press. Yeah, they weren't. And then there was another one. Oh crap! I can picture.
You want your goofy factoid for the day?
Yes, give me my goofy factoid for the day.
Arctic, Antarctic. They sound like obviously they have the same root words, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what that means? Polar bears, no polar bears.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
There are polar bears in the Arctic, no polar bears in the Antarctic.
Oh, now I've scrolled all the way down to the original art, and
I know I'm going to get lost in that.
Yeah, there's wow.
Mike Westlowski, you better get on there before he starts buying stuff you want.
No, I mean, I'm not. Yes, I do have some original pieces of art. Some of these are wow. I mean, some of these are like full-blown pages from the books.
Well, that's what I'm interested in. I like to have the original pages up on the wall.
Hang on a second. I'll just show you this right quick. This is what I'm actually looking at.
Oh man,
I mean,
yeah.
All these are pages that you can. Let me just scroll back up to where they started. These are pages where I'm guessing this is what you order. There's the first one that she was showing.
Yeah, that Mark Nelson piece.
Yep. And then there's I'm not sure who this. You know what? This Cape Town #1. This one right here.
Yeah.
That one looks really good.
That does look cool. I love that one there on the right at the top that you got right now.
This one?
2 characters and that heavy shadow behind them.
Yep.
That's classic comic book art right there.
And see, I like this one, and I know this is, I'm kind of trying to jump down to it. And I know this is kind of morbid, but the effect of the sheet laying over the body and you can still see where the person was screaming, that's great. Yeah. I mean, that's just great.
That's good storytelling right there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I need to get off this, and I need to
I need to get off this.
I need to get off that.
Yeah, support comic creators, bro.
And see, now I like these actually a little more, where it's more of the sketches of it.
Yeah. I'm always torn on that. You'll notice the art I've got on the wall at the store is almost all black and white. Because the color changes it so much, and sometimes I really, really love it, and sometimes I prefer the black and white, but I also do love just the pencils before inks have ever touched them, because you can see, like, you see that original vision, and then you can see the layers. What I would really love is to have the same page in all 3 iterations, right? Pencils, inked, and then colored, and have them all side by side. That would be awesome.
Oh, no, yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, that's fair.
I did, and I still stand by what I told you Saturday when I saw it. It's not that good looking. You just need to give it to me. I'll take it off your hands, and you tell him to try again. I mean, I'll take it away from you so you never have to look at it again.
You're all heart, Alan.
Yeah, I'll store it. No big deal. I'm even going to waive my storage fee.
You are a goober. Oh, man, I love you, brother. So last thing before we shut down and head out for the night, what time tomorrow are you going to see Black Panther?
It's probably not going to happen tomorrow. Well, it really depends, because I actually have to work tomorrow. Even though I don't plan on working past noon, but the Bug also has dance class tomorrow night. So tomorrow is really and truly a normal day for us. I'm hoping to go see it probably Sunday is what I'm hoping. It's really going to depend on what all's going on Saturday for us. If not, I'm going to do, and this will be one of the ones where I say, hey, Bug, we're going to see Black Panther, and she's going to race me to the car.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm pretty sure I'll be going to see it Sunday.
Well, alrighty then. Well, guys, I got to go. Y'all have a great night, and I will see you guys on Saturday at the store. I expect all y'all to come out and buy some comics, because they're awesome. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of good stuff going on. So y'all have a good night. Yes, definitely buy that. It's a great book.
Great book. Very fun book. Great introduction to brand new characters and a brand new story.
All right. Good night, everybody.
See ya.